John Beaudin, Rock History Book. How are you? We're back for more of interesting tidbits, things that happen in the history of rock and roll, the strangest stories. You know, there's not enough paper in the world to fill all the crazy stories that happened in the history of rock and roll and all the genres that are associated to rock and roll. If you want to comment on our videos, please do tonight. We'd like to hear from you. Always like hearing your take on the things that we talk about every single day on Rock History Book. This is an interesting one. It reached #1 in 28 countries around the world. But there's still confusion about what it means when really the guy who wrote the song says it's right in the freaking lyrics. It's right there. Read the lyrics. 28 countries. It's this man's biggest hit. Roy Bittan of the E Street Band starts the song. There's an interesting wordless chorus on the tune featuring our guest tonight, Qasim Sultan. Also Rory Dodd, who worked with the producer and the writer, Jim Steinman, and Todd Rundgren, of course, who had worked with our subject, Meatloaf, quite a bit. January 2nd, 1994. Meatloaf started a 3-week run at #1 on the UK albums chart with his 6th studio album. It was called Bat Out of Hell 2. Sort of a comeback. Back into Hell, the LP which featured the single I'll Do Anything for Love, But I Won't Do That. Also topped the charts in the US and Australia and has been one of the, well, it's his biggest hit as an artist. 14 million copies worldwide. And what are the things that, well, he wouldn't do? Jim Steinman, who wrote the song and produced it, said, it's right in the lyrics. Lie to you, forget the way you feel right now, forgive myself if you don't go all the way tonight, do it better than I do it with you. Like, he said this. Here's a quote from Jim Steinman. Hold on a second. Okay. He called it sort of a Beauty and the Beast thing, and the video was very much like that. But he says what he won't do is said about 6 times in the song, very specifically. It's not like a little puzzle. It goes by, and there are great things. He says, I won't stop being beautiful things. I won't stop doing beautiful things. I won't do bad things. It's very noble. He says, I'm very proud of the song, but it's kind of rather ambiguous to some people for whatever reason, because I think what happened is they were expecting something large, bigger than the lyrics. I remember hearing it and thinking, here's Bat Out of Hell, but it was called Bat Out of Hell 2. And I mean, he'd reached that sound in many albums before Bat Out of Hell 2. We're going to talk about Qasim Sultan from Utopia. We had a great interview with him when he basically talks about working with Meatloaf on Bat Out of Hell. By the way, Meatloaf won his only Grammy Award for I'll Do Anything for Love, But I Won't Do That. Best rock solo performance. I mean, 28 countries around the world? It's insane. Or is it? I can understand its likability because Jim Steinman had this sort of operatic, larger than life, and that was a subgenre that was becoming very big. And Meatloaf influenced a lot of, and Bonnie Tyler. There was a lot of other people, even Celine Dion working with Jim Steinman. There was a lot of other people who were doing that sort of sound. So I can understand that. But as promised, Qasim Sultan, what a nice human being he is. It's one of my favorite interviews that I've done since I lived on the East Coast. And we're going to listen to him talking about fun facts. No, well, let's leave the fun facts for a second. This is just him talking about making Bat Out of Hell, because he toured with Meatloaf and was on Bat Out of Hell 2 as a vocalist, a background vocalist. Great tune.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know where I put it. Oh, geez. I don't usually pull out album covers, but holy snapping turtles. They misspelled your name on this, right?
Yeah, T-A-N. Yeah, my name is misspelled more. My name is on that record more than Meatloaf's. So I but it's
You're
misspelled.
responsible for any of this stuff going on here.
Listen, I am
what's
not
going on here?
The only thing I'm responsible for on that record is helping with the arrangements and the bass playing on the entire record, which, you know, in terms of what are some of the highlights of your musical career, I think playing on one of the biggest selling records of all time is a feather in one's cap. You know, I mean, I have tons of friends who have played on millions of records, but not too many people have played on Dark Side of the Moon, Thriller. There's a Hotel California, or Bat Out of Hell, and then Falling Into You. So there were like 5 or 6 records that throughout the course of the recorded music that have sold that many records, and Bat Out of Hell is one of them, and I'm the bass player on that record. So there you go.
What a cool guy, huh? What a cool, and he's not, and he didn't mean to be boastful at all, and he's not that type of guy. But it's not that I got him there, but I kept asking questions of going, come on, man. As I said in our last video on this channel, I said, man, you did the work. You know, you got in Utopia with Todd Rundgren, man. That says an awful lot. Another clip. We've got 3 before we move on to, in our next video, George Harrison, arguably the best solo Beatle album, All Things Must Pass. But Qasim Sultan, talking about more facts on Bat Out of Hell. Remember, he continued to work with Meatloaf and tour with Meatloaf, and was on our subject, Bat Out of Hell 2, and he was a vocalist with Todd Rundgren, among others, on I'll Do Anything for Love, but I Won't Do That. To me, it's kind of like when I heard Carry On Wayward Son by Kansas, or Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. And I was a Queen album, you know, a Queen fan. I had the debut album, Sheer Heart Attack. But by the time, and then I hear that and I'm like turning around and saying, what the heck? But to me, Bat Out of Hell was not, I wouldn't have picked, I would have been wrong, but I wouldn't have picked that album as being a hit album. To me, that was a good example of people at least widening their horizons a little bit and saying there's more to radio than this.
You know, I mean, they got kicked out. Jim and Meatloaf got kicked out of Clive Davis's office. That Clive said, you guys, you should go find something else to do in life, because you are never going to be successful. And that's, you know, Clive Davis, who, you know, has a really good ear. You know, to his credit, Todd heard something in that music that no one else, or very few people, did, and took it and created something, or helped create something. It was really Jim and Todd that really envisioned that record the way it is. You know. And now there's you know, everybody's is responsible for the success of Bat Out of Hell. You know, it's like there was when Jim Steinman passed away, there was a Facebook post by someone who I know, and he was lamenting the fact that Jim had passed, and remembered his work on Bat Out of Hell 1. The guy was never anywhere near the freaking record. So there, what's the phrase? Success has many fathers, but failure is an orphan. You know, everybody's the first one to say, yeah, I did this on that record. I did that on that record. I was in the studio when they did this. No, sorry. There was 4 of us that recorded the basic tracks for that record from top to bottom. It was myself, Todd, Max Weinberg, and Roy Bittan. And then a lot of people came in and did overdubs and background vocals. Rory Dodd and Ellen Foley on background vocals. Myself, I did some background vocals. Todd sang some backgrounds. Meat was delegated to the corner until it was time for him to sing, and then we said, okay, you can sing now. But it was really Jim and Todd that put that whole concept, that whole record together, and it just resonated with millions and millions of disenfranchised people who did not want to, or didn't fall into the category of well, at that time there was no John Bon Jovi, but you know, the idea of what the music industry was selling as a beautiful rock star or a successful rock star was completely the antithesis of that.
I could listen to the guy talk all day, and I forgot I was going to track Qasim Sultan down this past year because as you can see outside my window, it was winter. It was last winter, and talking to him was just eye opening. Where at the end of the interview, I just felt like I'd met a guy that I was going to hang out with for forever. One more track about working with Meat, as they called him, with Qasim Sultan, who's on the subject song that we started with, because it was on this day that Bat Out of Hell 2 was on top of the charts in the UK. And I'll Do Anything for Love, But I Won't Do That, which is confusing to some people to say, what is that? Where Jim Steinman even said it's right in the lyrics before the chorus. And we say it 6 times in the chorus. And it's a long song. It was the longest song to reach number 1 on the UK charts since Hey Jude by the Beatles, until Oasis took that title over. But it says an awful lot, right? One more track from Qasim Sultan, and then I'll come back on. This is Fun Facts About Bat. This is what I call this. One more thing about that. I know that you had said in a previous interview that, so Todd calls you and you said, he just said, come on down here. You got to come down here.
No. He called me. I was living with Roger Powell up in Woodstock.
Mm-hmm.
And Todd had agreed to do this production, and they didn't have a band. Jim knew that he wanted Roy Bittan and Max Weinberg from the E Street Band because the music in his mind mirrored Bruce in a way, but they didn't have a bass player and they didn't have a guitar player, so of course Todd played guitar, and me being in proximity to the recording studio and the rehearsing, and at that point I was about 6 months into the band, and I had kind of proven myself as a worthy addition. So Todd called me and said, you want to play bass on a record, which, you know, even now, it's funny. I'm thinking about it now, and I'm like, he wouldn't have asked me to play if he didn't think I was any good.
I always say, man, you got to do the work to get in the room, you know?
You do have to do the work to get in the room. Yeah.
Yeah. And one last thing, when you went down and Ellen Foley was there and Meat was there, and they went through the whole album for you guys, right?
Yeah, they played the entire album from top to bottom. I'll never forget I was in Woodstock, and I was with my wife then, and we sat there and listened to them. Jim played piano, and Meatloaf sang, and Rory Dodd, who was a fellow Canadian, and Ellen Foley, the Paradise Girl. They not only sang everything, all the background vocals and all the parts that they heard, but they also acted it out. They acted out Paradise by the Dashboard Light in the accountant's office that we were on the second floor of the accountant's office in Bearsville Records, at a little upright piano. And it was a trip. It was a real, I wish somebody would have filmed that.
That's crazy. I had no idea about that part. They had it down. They had it down at least.
Yeah.
The theatrical. Oh, wow. It's crazy. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being in that room? And it's hard to imagine no one at one point, because they had to have been practicing this whole thing from start to finish, right? Qasim had good memories of working with Meat. He says he was a character, and we lost him last year, as you know. And it was a fitting thing when I saw the fact that it was the big anniversary. I'll Do Anything for Love, But I Won't Do That, which was the follow-up, really, to Bat Out of Hell. But it started a 3-week run, follow-up many years later. And number 1 on the UK charts, Bat Out of Hell 2, Back into Hell, with I'll Do Anything for Love, But I Won't Do That. 14 million copies, where Jim Steinman says that is lie to you, forget the way you feel right now, forgive you. You know, stuff like it's. He said we repeated 6 times. Why is it ambiguous to some people? But I guess it is. But as again, he had good memories of working with Meat. Gerald Lee. Jim Steinman was a terrific songwriter. I remember he wrote songs for Barry Manilow, Barbra Streisand also. Floodway. I always believed that Bat 2 was held back until the sales of Bat 1 started to slow down. Well, it was many albums later. So, yeah, it was 6. Bat Out of Hell was technically Meatloaf's second album. And the 6th studio album was Bat Out of Hell. So Bat Out of Hell 2 came out many albums later. So that wasn't the case. Transparent Media Truth. Hey, nice to have you back here. Swore John was talking about Rick Springfield. My eyes say he could easily pass for his brother. Yeah. Well, the question for a video title is usually not always for us, but sometimes it's fun to play with a little bit, right? It was a cool tune. I mean, I can't say that I loved it at the time, but I played it when I worked at 14 CFUN, one of the the iconic radio stations in Vancouver. It was an AM station that was starting to fade. I was the last person on the radio station before it turned talk. And I always say I broke the radio station because after my shift on Love Songs, we switched to talk music. The very next day. It was all planned, of course, long in advance. But I played that song many times. And at times I'd find myself, it's like Celine Dion not making the top 200 for vocalists for Rolling Stone. I'd find myself singing to it like I found myself singing to Celine Dion songs. And I went, well, maybe I like it. Maybe it's not cool to like, I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that. But there's something about it. And it has stood the test of time, that's for sure. I want to thank everyone for coming on. Thanks for, and we have one more clip coming up. I thought, I'm just got a lot of energy tonight. So I thought, well, we'll do 3 because it was on this day. Yeah, you got to pull people in. Transparent Media Truth. You do. We don't always do it that way, but I thought this was fun. Considering, 28 countries around the world. That's insane. Give credit where credit is due. It was his biggest hit, even though he had Bat Out of Hell in the 70s. Never had a number 1 song on Bat Out of Hell. This was his first number 1 song and number 1 in 28 countries. So good for you. He was an odd man. He really, really was. But he had some talent. And he wasn't a big part of making Bat Out of Hell. He was, like he said, he was relegated to the corner, according to Qasim. Jim Steinman, the 2 guys from the E Street Band, Todd Rundgren, Qasim Sultan, they were basically putting it all together. But Meatloaf sang the heck out of that album. And without him, it wouldn't have been that album. So there you go. Thanks for joining me. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel. There's ways of helping the channel in the description. But we love you, man. We appreciate you. And we're going to work on George Harrison. It's late here. It's 11 p.m. here. But a lot earlier out in the West. So we'll do it one more tonight. Take care of yourself.